What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, where I answer your questions. Hope you had a good weekend. Let's get started. First up, should Mercy's res cooldown be cut in half when interrupted? That's an interesting idea. I'm not so sure that it would work all that well, though. There's a couple of things. So first of all, if it gets interrupted, then it probably means that Mercy got eliminated. And with her gone, and whoever she was trying to res gone, it means that that team is now down 2. There's a pretty good chance you're going to end up losing that fight. Now, if you're on defending, and it's, let's say, the first point, then having that quick kind of comeback with the res isn't going to really matter, because the attackers are going to have to capture the point, or they're going to have to start moving the payload. So by the time you get into the next big fight, Mercy probably already would have the res back anyway, so it's not really going to help on the defenders. However, it would be very strong on the attackers, because if it ends up getting interrupted and it doesn't work when you're attacking, trying to make that push, then you're going to have it back much faster, so it's going to be more advantageous to have Mercy on attack than on defense. However, there is a situation where it would work on defense, which is on the second point of the capture, or on the very end of some of these payload maps and stuff, where the defenders are trying to stall the end point. And in that case, it would be really frustrating, because even if you interrupt the res, well, now she's going to get it back much faster, and they can just keep stalling and stalling and stalling. So in most situations, it's going to give an advantage to the attackers, and in stalling situations, it's going to make it worse. So I'm not really sure. I don't think it would really be all that good. Honestly, as I've said this before, I don't think res is a very good ability to have in this game, and they should probably replace it with something else. Next up, if hero bans were implemented into the game, how do you think it would work? Well, at the Pro Overwatch League level, it would be very simple, because you're just going to have team captains, and they're going to decide. But for the competitive ladder, who is it that gets to decide for each team? Is it the person that's the highest rank? That would be simple, but may not be the best idea. It could be randomly chosen who gets to pick. Again, simple, but probably not the best idea. You could have a voting system where everybody gets to kind of chime in and see what they want, and they would have a system where you can click on the different characters and decide what gets banned and all that sort of stuff. And that could work, but it would need to be very fast and very efficient, maybe taking 30 to 45 seconds at most, because people don't want to spend 4, 5, 6 minutes in this ban phase before the match even starts. Like, they want to just get it done and then go and start playing the match. So it could work, but again, needs to be quick, needs to be efficient. I actually do have some other bigger ideas I could probably kind of think about a little bit more, and maybe I can put something together. Also, I do still kind of think that there aren't enough characters in the game. I would like to see at least 50 characters before we have hero bans. Next up, no question, just want to wish you a happy birthday. Well, thank you very much. I included this because I also wanted to make a little bit of an announcement. Yes, my birthday is coming up. It's this Friday, December 6th. I am going to be very old. I'm going to be 39 years old. I'm going to try to stream that evening as well. I don't know if it's just going to be quick play with viewers or competitive or whatever, but again, thank you very much. And I do want to start streaming more often, so keep an eye out for that stuff. Next up, should there be different buffs and nerfs for each rank? No, absolutely not. I've heard this suggested before as a way to kind of balance out the characters, because there are some heroes that are very strong in the upper bracket and just garbage in the lower bracket, and vice versa. But this is not a good idea. You want to have consistency among all of the ranks, so that way that once you know how to play a character, it shouldn't matter what rank you're in. Like, you should be able to just use that character the same way. Imagine you're in Platinum and you win a match and you rank up into Diamond and you go and play your character, and suddenly one of your abilities has an extra 2 seconds on the cooldown. That's just not good. And then you end up, you lose a couple matches, you drop down into Platinum, and then, oh look, now the cooldown is reduced. You don't want that. That's not a good idea. Just learn the characters as they are. And Blizzard really needs to do a better job of just balancing in the, the rank versus the rank thing. So that way you don't have characters that are really good in the lower and just bad in the upper, and vice versa, and blah, blah, blah. But no, having different ranks and stuff, different balancing for the ranks, that's just not a good idea. Next up, why not make Overwatch 2 a 7 versus 7 with 2 tanks, 3 DPS, and 2 healers? interesting idea. I've actually thought a little bit about it myself, but the first problem is that Overwatch 2 is not going to be a completely separate game from Overwatch 1. Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 players will be in the same matches. So you're not going to be able to tell whether or not they're in Overwatch 2 or Overwatch 1 because all of them are going to be put together. So if there was going to be a change, it would have to affect both games, not just the sequel or the expansion or whatever it is that they want to call it, right? So it would have to affect both. Now, this would be a pretty good solution short term for the DPS queue times, but it would also cause a whole bunch of problems with balancing, and also I don't think it's necessarily the greatest long-term solution. Again, yeah, it would be great because the queue times for DPS would suddenly drop, but the problem I think that ultimately needs to be addressed is the fact that people don't play the tanks and the healers just because they don't enjoy it. They want to play DPS, they want to pew pew pew, and they want to get those big eliminations and stuff, and they just don't find healer and tank to be all that fun. And I think that's what Blizzard needs to address, and I've talked about this before. They need to make playing healer and playing tank more fun, and then the people that are queuing up for DPS, you know, not all of them obviously, but a bunch of them will decide, hey, maybe I should go and try playing tank instead, or maybe play healer instead, or something like that. And the solution will kind of come through that way. But would it be okay if you had the 2-3-2? I mean, again, short term, yeah, but I don't think it would ultimately be good for the game. Next up, how important are animation cancels? Well, they can definitely be very useful, but they're not extremely important all the time. So there are a couple of things like using your quick melee to animation cancel your reload. That's very good, particularly if the enemy is close, because then you can weave in that extra 30 damage. And by the way, no, canceling your reload does not make it go faster, no matter what character it is, even with Reaper. Yeah, I know it looks like he's able to attack sooner, but he's not. Trust me, I've already tested it. I got a Mythbuster video about it. But animation canceling your reload with the quick melee, yeah, that's a nice little thing. You might be able to win a duel because of that. Other things like with Roadhog using his take a breather to animation cancel his reload. Genji has a couple of animation cancels with his dash and some of his attacks and stuff. So these can be very useful, and you should learn them to be certain, but it's not like it's absolutely critical that you do it all the time, right? They're useful tools, know when to use them and how to use them, but don't worry if you don't do it every single time. Next up, why do some heroes respawn quicker than others? That is not true. The respawn timer is dependent on the situation. So different maps have different respawn times, whether you're on attacker or defense. And also, this can change depending on how many people are on a particular capture point. So, if you're defending on Hanamura, and the attackers are on the capture point, the longer they are on it, the longer your respawn becomes. And there's a certain math that they use in order to figure this out. Basically, if you're attacking the second capture point on one of these maps, you want to have all of your team on the capture point as much as possible, because then it extends the respawn time of the defending players. Now, some of the maps have very quick respawns, other maps have longer ones, but every single character has the exact same respawn time. Next up, would destroyable terrain work in Overwatch? I think it definitely can, but there are certain things and certain guidelines that you would have to use in order to make it actually worth having. So I guess the best example is the railings in Overwatch. This is what you don't want to have, because let's say you're playing on the Hollywood map. The defenders go up onto the high ground. What's the first thing you do? You have to destroy the railings. Every single time the defenders have to destroy the railings, so that way when you're attacking, it doesn't get, interrupted by the railings and it doesn't block you and all this sort of stuff. So it's not really a fun experience, it's a nuisance that the defenders have to do every single time. So you don't want to have any objects in the map where the defenders have to break it every single time the match starts. That's just not fun. Now, on the reverse, though, you could make it so that the attackers have to break through something like a side wall or something like that, in order to get an extra route, then that could definitely work, because then they have to decide, are we going to invest time into destroying this thing, or are we just going to go into the other way? Now, if it is a control point map where both sides have the same kind of advantages and disadvantages, then you could also do that. Like, maybe you could have something that provides access to high ground, right? And in order to get up into the tower at the very top, you would have to be someone like a Winston or a Widowmaker or something like that, and you can, get up there. But you could have destructible area that either makes that high ground break so that they can no longer get up there, or you could have something else that makes it so that there creates a path, like some broken rocks or something fall, and it now allows other characters like Soldier 76 or whoever else to get up there, and they don't need to use the grappling hook or the super jump or any of that sort of stuff. So there's a bunch of different things that you could do, yes, but as long as it doesn't work like the railings do, I think it would be a good idea. Next up, who do you think will be great heroes to pick in the new patch? This is a tough one. So first of all, people are asking, when is the patch going to happen? I'm not really sure. Maybe it could be this week, tomorrow, possibly next week. I mean, the changes haven't been on the PTR for all that long. I think maybe they might want a little bit more time on it. But anyways, that patch is going to change so much stuff. There's going to be a lot of characters that are suddenly now useful because the barriers are so much worse. And you're going to have more Hanzo, more Widow, all that sort of stuff. But other tank combinations are also going to be very good. I've talked about this before, right? Like, Orisa and Zarya is something that you would never use before, and now it might actually be pretty decent to use that. You're also going to have other stuff like Reinhardt and Orisa. I think ultimately Reinhardt is probably going to get a pretty big resurgence in his play, because he now has the only really good barrier in the game, because Sigma's barrier is garbage, and Orisa's barrier is garbage, and Winston, I mean, he has his, but it's kind of a different playstyle, so it's not quite the same. But the only tank that has a really good barrier now is going to be Reinhardt, and you also have characters like Zarya who pair really well with him. But, I mean, there's all kinds of different combinations. I think probably the best thing to come from this is that there's the likelihood of a lot more variety. We'll just have to wait and see, though. Next up, would a character with multiple styles of play work? So if you're talking about, like, basically picking a different version of a character at the start of a match, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that if you're going to have a character that has different kind of stances, then you can do that, but it would have to be in the game. Kind of like with Hammond going in the ball, or just, kind of moving around normally, right? Or even Bastion when he's in normal mode or the sentry mode. But, I mean, Bastion's a bad example because he's not a good character. But there are other things, like, for example, in World of Warcraft, right? You have warrior, at least in classic version, you have warriors who have different stances. You have druids who have the different shape-shifting stuff. So you could do that, yeah. And there are other games that have characters that are able to shift between different stances. Like, one stance will be much more offensive, another stance will be much more defensive. I made a character called Vidal. He's one of my favorite hero concepts. And there's also a comic to go along with him, which came out really good. If you haven't checked that stuff out, I'll put some links down below. But Vidal is a Los Muertos healer, and he has two different modes. So you can be in this harmful mode where you can deal damage and put debuffs on the enemy, and then he has this helpful mode that you can switch into where he will heal his team and buff his team as well. So something like that could work, definitely. If you're talking about changing the stances during the match, yeah, like switching around your abilities and stuff, but you don't want to have a character that has, where you have to pick at the beginning. Now, if you're talking about, now maybe I got this question wrong entirely, maybe you're talking about multiple styles, like just a different method of playing the character, then that already exists, because people play characters in all different kinds of ways, right? There are people that will play Roadhog as more defensive to kind of protect the backline. There are people that try to flank with Roadhog. I mean, you can, if you're talking about that, then it already exists. But if you're talking about a character that actually switches abilities, then yeah, I definitely think it could work. And once more, you want to see a really great example, go and check out the hero concept for Vidal. Links down below. But that is going to be all the questions for today. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. Remember, I post the question card for the Respawn series every Saturday on the community tab of my YouTube channel, and you can also find all of the previous Respawn videos and all the questions that have been asked in my Discord server. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.